Rain hammered the windshield as Lucian Whitlock shoved a report into Soren Bellamy's chest. The paper hit the wet pavement. Soren looked down at his name beneath an accusation. Theft. Investors stood beneath umbrellas. Lucian's suit remained perfect, despite the storm. Apologize. Soren looked up. Lucian's voice carried across the racing circuit. You have 10 seconds to admit what you did. Soren had not stolen anything. Lucian knew it too. The accusation was meant to make him kneel before people who could ruin his reputation. Hi, viewers. Would you stay with someone who demanded an apology for something you did not do? Soren's fingers tightened. 3 years beside Lucian had taught him one rule: never challenge him in public. His family's debts and medical bills were tied to the Whitlock fortune. Then a man beside the garage gave a laugh. Rafe Calder stood beside a silver race car, wearing a racing jacket covered with sponsor patches. A scar crossed his jaw. Rain ran from his hair as he studied the report. If the evidence is real, Rafe said, why are you asking him to apologize instead of proving it? The circuit went quiet. Lucian turned. This does not concern you. Rafe looked at the cameras. Then stop making it everyone's business. Investors lowered their phones. Lucian's mouth tightened. You are a disgraced driver. Nobody asked for your opinion. Rafe glanced at the report. That explains why you are accusing someone who cannot safely answer you. Soren bent and picked up the paper. His hands shook once. Lucian stepped closer. You need my family. Walk away, and every debt comes due. The threat hit harder than the rain. Soren looked at Rafe. I am not apologizing. Lucian reached for his wrist. Rafe caught Lucian's hand before it closed. Then Rafe said quietly, You really want a court to examine that report? Lucian pulled free, but his face had changed. Soren saw it. Fear. Then Lucian faced the cameras and said, Let him explain why he married into my family. Soren froze. He had never married anyone, and Lucian was already walking away. Soren followed Lucian into the glass-walled pit office before the cameras could reach them. You lied, Soren said. Lucian closed the door. I corrected the story. There was no marriage. There will be one if you want your family protected. Lucian placed a folder on the desk. The pages carried account numbers and dates he recognized. Sign the marriage agreement, Lucian said. Then everything stays where it is. Soren pushed the folder back. No. Lucian's expression hardened. You think that racer can save you? Outside, engines roared. Rafe climbed out moments later and walked toward them. Soren opened the door. You said court, he said. Can you actually help me get away from him? Yes. Why? Rafe looked at Lucian. Because I need something too. Rafe explained that his racing company was trapped inside a legal trust after his crash. A sponsorship agreement could restore his control, but one condition required a stable household before the deadline. Soren stared at him. You need a husband. I need a legal spouse. And you chose me? I chose someone Lucian cannot easily control once the marriage is recognized. Rafe placed a contract on the desk. 12 months, separate bedrooms, separate finances, no forced intimacy, no interference in private affairs, no claim over the other person's property. Either man could leave when the term ended. Soren read it twice. This protects me from him. That is the point. And what do you get? A chance to get my company back. Lucian laughed. You think a disgraced racer can replace me? Soren looked at the contract, then at Rafe. Where do I sign? Rafe slid a pen across the desk. Soren signed. His hand stopped when he saw the date beside Rafe's signature. Rafe had signed 2 days earlier. Soren looked up. You knew this was coming. Rafe's eyes stayed on the page. I knew I would need you. For the first time that night, Soren wondered quietly whether he had escaped one trap, only to enter another. Outside, thunder rolled over the track, and Rafe said nothing at all again. The courthouse doors opened, and a wall of cameras turned toward Soren. Rafe stood beside him, one hand resting on the folder proving their marriage was legal. Look this way! Did you leave Lucian for money? Is the racer using you? Soren kept walking. By noon, their photograph was everywhere. Every headline used the same words: Billionaire, Fiancé, Racer. Their new home had 2 bedrooms and 2 sets of keys. Soren placed his suitcase beside the stairs. Rafe pointed toward the hallway. Your room is on the left. Good. My room is on the right. Even better. Rafe handed him a key. No cameras inside. Your phone stays private. If you want me out of a room, say so. Soren closed his fingers around the key. Lucian had never asked permission to enter anything. The next morning, Soren joined Rafe at the racing workshop. He expected broken cars. Instead, detailed designs covered an entire wall. Rafe had been rebuilding racing technology from scratch. You still work on this? I never stopped. Soren studied a design for a safer braking system. This could sell. It could save lives first. Soren looked at him. Rafe shrugged. Money comes after that. Then Soren's phone buzzed. A private medical report had been uploaded to a gossip site. His rare omega scent sensitivity was exposed, along with medications he had taken after a serious reaction years earlier. His stomach dropped. Within minutes, the story spread. Commenters called him unstable. Investors questioned his judgment. A sponsor connected to Rafe announced a review. Rafe entered carrying 2 coffees. He stopped when he saw Soren's face. What happened? Soren turned the phone toward him. Rafe read the report. His expression went still. You gave them this. No. You were the only person who knew. That is not true. Soren stepped back. Rafe reached toward him, then stopped before touching him. Find out who leaked it. You want me to trust you while you say that. I want you to check the evidence. Soren looked again at the report. A tiny file number sat at the bottom. He recognized the format. It belonged to a private medical archive. Someone had accessed his records without his permission. His phone buzzed again against the silent kitchen counter again. A second message appeared right there. Ask your husband who paid for the records. The next morning, Soren slammed his laptop shut when the gossip site posted another photograph. This time it showed him leaving Rafe's house. The caption called him desperate. Soren opened the medical report again. The file number matched the archive system used by Whitlock Holdings. He grabbed his coat. Rafe was in the garage, tightening a wheel. You knew. Rafe looked up. The file came from a Whitlock server. Rafe set down the tool. Then we trace it. No! I trace it! Rafe did not argue. Instead, he called an independent forensic accountant named Amari Brooks. Amari arrived with a laptop and 3 encrypted drives. She opened the leaked report. The file was copied at 2:14 a.m. From where? Private server. Whose? Amari turned the screen. Whitlock Automotive Services. Soren's chest tightened. Lucian's family had access to the system that released the report. Amari continued searching. Another file appeared. It contained payments made to a shell company 6 months before Soren's engagement. Soren recognized the account number. It belonged to his family business. That is impossible. Amari shook her head. No, it is just hidden. The payment trail showed money leaving his family account, moving through shell companies, then returning as a loan. Soren stared at the screen. His family had not simply fallen into debt. Someone had been moving their own money out and selling it back to them. Rafe stood behind Soren. Who controlled the accounts? Soren answered. Lucian's father. Silence filled the garage. Then Soren noticed a date. The first transfer happened 3 weeks before Rafe's racing crash. He clicked the document. A second record opened. It was a payment to a racing parts supplier. The supplier had provided components for Rafe's car. Rafe went still. Soren looked at him. Was this part on your car? Yes. The room seemed smaller. Soren remembered Lucian demanding an apology. He remembered Rafe appearing at exactly the right moment. How much did you already know? Rafe did not answer. Amari closed the laptop. That question can wait. Soren turned toward her. Why? Because someone is watching the account. Her phone lit up. A new alert appeared. Someone had tried to delete the payment records while they were viewing them. Amari secured the files. Rafe moved toward the garage door. Soren followed. Outside, an engine started. A black sedan now waited across the street. Its headlights flashed once. Then it accelerated straight toward them at full speed without slowing. Rafe shoved Soren sideways as the black sedan jumped the curb. The car tore through the garage gate and struck a parked vehicle and spun it across the concrete. Soren hit the ground. Rafe dropped beside him. "Are you hurt?" Soren checked his arms and ribs. "No." Rafe looked toward the sedan. The driver was already gone. Rain blew through the broken gate. Amari stood frozen beside the workbench. "Who was that?" Rafe rose. "I don't know." Soren stared at him. "You always have an answer." "Not this time." They spent an hour checking cameras, but the garage system had been wiped. Every recording. Someone had planned the attack. Soren sat at Rafe's desk, while Amari copied what remained. Rafe returned with a first aid kit. "You have a cut." Soren touched his forehead. Blood marked his fingers. Rafe opened the kit. "Sit." Soren did. Rafe cleaned the cut, stopping whenever Soren shifted. "You don't have to do that," Soren said. "I know." That answer stayed with him. Later, Soren found Rafe alone in the workshop. A damaged race car sat beneath the lights. Its front end was stripped open. "You still want to race?" Rafe kept working. "I want to know what happened to me." Soren moved closer. "What if you find out someone caused the crash?" Rafe stopped. "Then I make sure it never happens to another driver." Rafe pointed to the braking assembly. This failed before impact. "Driver error?" That was the official finding. Rafe opened a panel. A small metal component sat inside. It should not have broken like this. Soren studied it. Could someone have changed it? Rafe looked at him. Yes. Soren remembered the payment to the parts supplier. He looked at Rafe. "You knew." "I suspected." "For how long?" 3 years. Soren stepped back. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because suspicion is not proof. But you knew enough to investigate my family." Rafe lowered his eyes. "I knew your family was connected to the supplier." Soren stared at him. The room seemed colder. Rafe reached for the component. Soren stopped him. "Don't." Rafe froze. Soren looked at the scar across his jaw. "You approached me because of this." Rafe said nothing. That silence answered more than words could. Soren turned toward the door. His phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. "You were never his rescue. You were his evidence." Soren looked back at Rafe. For the first time since signing the contract, he could not tell which man had trapped him. Rafe did not follow Soren. That was the part Soren hated most. He expected an argument. Instead, Rafe stepped aside. Soren walked into the rain. By midnight, the contract sat untouched on his kitchen table. He stared at the signatures until the ink seemed to blur. Rafe had lied by omission. Lucian had lied openly. Somehow, the quieter lie hurt more. The next morning, Lucian called. "Come home." Soren ended the call. Then a message arrived from an unknown number. A photograph showed the braking component Rafe had found. Under it were 6 words. "You are looking in the wrong place." Soren carried the photograph to his family's old office. The building had been closed for months. Dust covered the reception desk. He opened the accounting cabinets. 3 hours passed. Then he found a payment ledger hidden inside an old tax file. The money moved from his family's company to a shell corporation, then to a racing supplier, then into an account controlled by Whitlock Automotive. But there was another name, Malcolm Whitlock, Lucian's father. Soren opened another file. A maintenance invoice showed that the same supplier had inspected Rafe's car before the crash. A handwritten note sat beneath it. "Replace assembly before final inspection." Soren read it twice. Then he noticed the date, 3 days before the crash. His phone rang. Amari's name appeared. "I found something," she said. "So did I." The medical record leak wasn't ordered by Lucian. Soren stopped. "Who ordered it?" "I traced the payment." A pause. "Malcolm." Soren looked at the ledger. Malcolm had built the machine. Soren returned home before sunrise. Rafe was sitting alone in the garage. Soren placed the ledger on the workbench. "You were right about the crash." Rafe stared at the pages. "You found Malcolm?" "No. I found what he left behind." Rafe stood. "You knew my family was involved. I knew there was a connection. You knew before you married me." "Yes." Soren swallowed. "And you still let me believe you chose me because you wanted to help." Rafe looked away. "I wanted to help you too." "That doesn't make the lie smaller." "No." Soren gathered the documents. "I will handle this." Rafe's jaw tightened. "You don't have to do it alone." Soren looked at him. "I have to learn how." He walked away. This time, Rafe stayed where he was. Soren reached the elevator and looked at the contract in his hand. For the first time, the paper felt less like protection than evidence, and he had not yet decided whether Rafe belonged on his side of it. Soren spent the next week building a case. He did not call Rafe or Lucian. He called regulators, former employees, retired mechanics, and a corporate fraud attorney. The racing supplier had received unusual payments. Inspection reports had been altered. A safety complaint had disappeared. A former mechanic remembered being ordered to replace a brake component after refusing to approve it. Then Soren found something worse. His family's debt had been manufactured. The Whitlocks had drained it, then bought the debt. At his father's desk, Soren understood the truth. Lucian needed his family dependent. Amari arrived with another drive. "There is one file left." "What's on it?" "Rafe's original crash investigation." Soren opened it. The official report blamed driver error. The private review said otherwise. Brake failure, unauthorized component replacement, missing inspection data, and one signature, Malcolm Whitlock. Soren closed his eyes. Someone had made Rafe's failure look like an accident. Soren could expose it, but hundreds of employees could suffer. Some had known, many had not. His attorney gave him the warning. Once this goes public, the company may collapse. What about innocent employees? They may lose their jobs. Soren stared at the files. Justice would not arrive clean. That night, Lucian appeared outside his apartment. "You can still stop this." Soren did not open the door. Lucian held up a folder. "Your family's debt disappears. Your business gets restored. Your brother's accounts are protected. What do you want? End the marriage." Soren laughed. "You're still bargaining with my life. I'm giving you a way out." "No. You're giving me another cage with better furniture." Lucian left. Soren turned back toward the evidence. Freedom meant standing alone. The next morning, Soren requested a formal hearing with the Racing Federation. Friday was set. By Thursday night, every document had been organized. Amari secured the digital records. Soren prepared his statement. Rafe called once. Soren answered. "I heard about the hearing. I know. You shouldn't have to do this. I know." Then Rafe said, "I am proud of you." Soren closed his eyes. "I can't let that change my decision." "It won't." Rafe ended the call. Soren sat alone until midnight. Then his attorney arrived. "There is a problem." She placed a letter on the table. The Whitlocks filed an emergency motion claiming Soren obtained documents illegally. If it succeeded, the evidence could be blocked. Can they do that? They can try. What happens if they win? The attorney looked at him. Then you walk into that hearing with nothing. Soren looked toward the window. Friday was hours away. Friday morning arrived under gray skies. The Federation hearing room was packed. Executives filled the front rows. Reporters crowded the back. Rafe sat near the side wall. Lucian sat beside his father's attorneys. Malcolm Whitlock entered last, looking calm. Soren walked to the microphone. The chairman asked him to explain why the evidence should be admitted. Soren opened the first file. Because these records were not stolen. Lucian smiled. Soren continued. They were recovered from a company archive belonging to my family. Malcolm shifted. Soren noticed the movement. He presented the debt transfers, then the shell companies, then the supplier payments, then the altered inspection reports. The room grew quiet. Lucian stood. This is speculation. Soren looked directly at him. No, this is accounting. He displayed the server logs proving that his medical records had been accessed through a Whitlock-controlled system. Malcolm's attorney objected. The chairman overruled him. Soren opened the final file. Rafe's crash investigation appeared on the screen. The official report blamed Rafe. The private engineering report showed brake failure. The payment trail connected the supplier to Whitlock Automotive. Then Soren displayed Malcolm's signature. Nobody spoke. Rafe stared at the screen, his shoulders lowered. Soren turned toward the hearing panel. My marriage to Rafe gave me distance from the people controlling my family. He paused. But I am not here because he saved me. Rafe looked at him. I am here because I chose to find the truth. The chairman ordered an immediate investigation. Federal investigators entered the room before the hearing ended. Lucian stood beside his father. For once, neither had an answer. The company did not collapse in a single dramatic moment. It began with frozen accounts, then resignations, then subpoenas, then investors leaving. The empire that had seemed untouchable became a legal case. Rafe's license was restored after the Federation reopened his crash investigation. Soren did not celebrate yet. He stood outside the hearing room while reporters shouted questions. Rafe approached. You did it. Soren shook his head. We did what had to be done. Rafe looked at him. Are we still married? Soren looked down at the contract. 1 month left. Rafe nodded. I understand. Soren waited for him to argue. He didn't. Rafe walked away. Soren watched him disappear into the crowd. The hearing had exposed the Whitlocks, but it had also left one question unanswered. What would happen when the contract expired? The next month passed quietly. Soren rebuilt his family's company without Whitlock money. He sold 2 luxury properties and paid workers before paying himself. He created a fund for employees who had been caught inside the scandal without knowing about it. Rafe received an offer to race overseas. He accepted. Soren kept working through the criticism. He knew rebuilding would take years, and he was willing to spend them proving the company could stand without anyone's permission. He had spent enough time surviving someone else's decisions. Now he intended to make his own. The weeks after the hearing were not easy. The Whitlock investigation spread across newspapers, boardrooms, and filings. Some investors blamed Soren. Former employees sent messages describing what they had seen and what they had been afraid to say. Soren answered them. He refused to celebrate. Many employees had nothing to do with Malcolm's decisions. He used his family's remaining assets to keep local operations open and protect wages. His decisions were no longer made to please a powerful man. Rafe's restored license brought pressure. Sponsors wanted interviews. Reporters wanted the crash story. Rafe accepted one interview. When asked who had saved his career, he gave one answer. Soren found the truth. Soren saw the clip that night. He replayed it once. Then he turned off the television. Their marriage had become public again, but neither knew what would happen when the contract ended. The uncertainty stayed between them. 3 weeks later, Rafe received an offer from an international racing team. The contract was worth more than anything he had earned before the crash. He accepted it. Soren heard the news from Amari. He expected anger. Instead, he felt something stranger: pride. Rafe had spent 3 years fighting to return to the place he belonged. Soren could not ask him to stop now. The night before Rafe's flight, Soren found him beside his car. You should go. Rafe looked at him. Do you want me to stay? Soren almost answered. Instead, he said, I want you to choose. Rafe smiled. I learned that from you. He left. Soren watched the taillights disappear. Then he went back inside and removed the old contract from the drawer. The expiration date was only weeks away. For the first time, he did not fear it. Soren woke some nights expecting another demand, another account frozen, another door opening without permission. But fear no longer decided his choices. Rafe had learned something too. Protection meant nothing if it came with ownership. So he waited, even when waiting was difficult, until Soren was ready to make the next decision himself. That was why his return felt different. 3 months passed. Rafe raced in Europe. Soren rebuilt his company. Neither man dated. Neither called. Then, on a cold Sunday afternoon, Rafe returned. Soren had not expected him. He stood outside the office door, holding a thin folder. Soren looked at it. Another contract? Yes. The answer carried no pressure. Rafe waited. Soren opened the door wider. Come in. Rafe stepped inside. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was not uncomfortable. It was earned. Soren took the folder from his hand. He looked at Rafe. The man standing there was scarred, still quiet, still impossible to read. But this time, Soren knew he could walk away, and that was why he stayed. The first page contained one sentence. There was no legal trick hidden between the lines. No promise that could become a debt. Neither party owes the other anything. The second page contained another. Either party may leave without penalty. Soren looked up. Rafe said, I don't want your money. Soren turned the page. I don't want your protection. I know. I don't want another expiration date. Neither do I. Soren looked at the final signature line. It was blank. For the first time, the blank space did not look like a threat. It looked like a choice. Soren signed. Rafe took the pen. Then he stopped. You're sure? Soren nodded. Rafe signed beside him. No cameras waited outside. No investors watched. No family member demanded anything. Just 2 men standing in an office, after surviving a year that had changed everything. The first contract had been signed because both men needed an escape. The second existed because neither man needed to be rescued anymore. Soren closed the folder. Rafe reached for his hand and waited. Soren closed the distance himself. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. This time, neither man was running from anything. They were simply choosing where to go next.